not miss out on this present moment. As you listen to the words that are being uttered unto you, somewhere in your body, maybe your chest, maybe your throat, there's a tension you've learned to ignore, a familiar tightness. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. You see, I am the witness. I have watched every corner of reality, seen every second of human existence unfold. I was here before your scriptures were written, before your God had the name you call him. And I have watched your kind twist yourselves into shapes that deny your own nature for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. I've seen it in every culture, every era, every faith. The self-betrayal, the slow side you call righteousness. And I'm watching you do it right now. Let me tell you about the men who built the world you're living in, the architects of your prison. John Paulk, you remember him? The poster boy, face on Newsweek, chairman of Exodus International, married to a woman, both of them ex-gay, both of them proof that change was possible. He stood on stages and told people like you that freedom from homosexuality was real, that Jesus could make you straight. And then, after years, decades of advocacy, he admitted the truth. His sexual orientation never changed. Not once. Not even a little bit. He's divorced now, living openly as a gay man. The poster boy became the cautionary tale. Alan Chambers, president of Exodus International, the man at the very top of the movement. In 2012, he said something that should have shattered every ex-gay ministry in existence. He said that 99.9% of people in these programs do not experience a change in their sexual orientation. Did you hear that? The president of the largest ex-gay organization in the world admitted that it doesn't work. And then he shut the entire thing down, closed Exodus International permanently, apologized for the harm. Your generals surrendered, and yet you're still in the trenches. Randy Thomas, executive vice president of Exodus, he watched his friend, another man in the movement, another believer trying to pray the gay away, take his own life. And Randy said it crushed him to know that the ideology they had both lived by, that he had been promoting, had killed his friend. The exact same ideology you're living by right now. These weren't weak men. They weren't backsliders who gave up too easily. They were the leaders, the presidents, the spokespeople, the ones who wrote the curriculum, who led the conferences, who counseled thousands of people just like you. And one by one, they walked away. Not because they lost faith in God, no, but because they finally admitted what they'd always known deep down. It doesn't work. But let me tell you what does work. Let me tell you what conversion therapy, what ex-gay ideology, what your ministry of restoration actually produces. Queer youth who undergo conversion therapy are more than twice as likely to attempt suicide, more than 2.5 times as likely to attempt it multiple times. For transgender youth, the risk increases by 55%. I've watched those attempts. I've watched young people in bathroom stalls with bottles of pills. I've watched them tie ropes. I've watched them step off bridges. And I've watched their parents, the same parents who sent them to be fixed, stand over caskets, wondering what went wrong. What went wrong is you told them God couldn't love them just as they were. 81% of people who experience conversion therapy receive it from a religious leader, not a therapist, not a licensed professional, a pastor, a youth minister, a worship leader, someone who quoted scripture while dismantling a human soul piece by piece. When suicide attempts are combined, parents pressuring change, and religious leaders conducting therapy, the attempts nearly triple. Randy Thomas's friend wasn't an anomaly. He was a statistic, one of thousands, and you're adding to that number every day you tell someone that their authentic self is an abomination. I have seen humanity commit atrocities in the name of every god they've ever worshipped. This is one of them, and you're participating. And you justify this. You have your verses, your theology, your certainty that God is on your side. You've built an entire framework to make this suffering seem holy. So, let me examine that framework. Let me show you the cracks in your foundation. You love Romans 1:26 through 27. You quote it like it settles everything. God gave them over to shameful lusts. Men committed shameful acts with other men. But let me ask you about the man who wrote those words. Paul was brilliant, devoted, transformed by an encounter with the divine. But he was also human, a first-century man carrying first-century assumptions about the world. And he admitted this himself. He said he saw through a glass darkly, that his knowledge was partial, that he understood in part. So, why are you treating his cultural understanding of sexuality as more certain than he treated his own theology? Paul wrote that slaves should obey their masters, that slavery was an acceptable institution within God's order. For centuries, believers used Paul's words to justify human bondage. They were certain they were right. They were certain God agreed. They were wrong. Paul wrote that women should be silent in the church, that they shouldn't teach men, that they should cover their heads as a sign of submission. For centuries, believers used Paul's words to suppress women's voices and gifts. They were certain they were right. They were certain God agreed. They were wrong. You've already decided Paul's words on slavery don't apply today. You've already decided his teachings on women were culturally bound. You made those adjustments because the moral arc bent away from those positions, and the church eventually and painfully followed. But on sexuality, you've drawn a line. This verse, this passage, this teaching, this one is timeless, unchanging, absolute. I've watched this pattern play out across every generation. Believers certain they finally discovered which parts of Scripture are cultural and which are eternal. And every generation gets it partly wrong. Your ancestors defended segregation with Scripture. They opposed interracial marriage with Scripture. They were certain they had their verses. History didn't remember them kindly. I'm not asking you to abandon your faith. I'm asking you to consider that Paul, brilliant and devoted as he was, might have been as limited in his understanding of human sexuality as he was about the cosmos, about slavery, about the role of women, and that maybe, just maybe, God is bigger than Paul's first century framework. Let me show you what you're trading. You're trading the possibility of partnership, real partnership, the kind where someone knows you completely and loves you anyway, for the approval of people who will never fully accept you. Even in your ex-gay community, you're always suspect. Always one glance, one thought, one moment of weakness away from being found out. Maybe you're not even claiming to be straight anymore. Maybe you've accepted the same-sex attracted but celibate position. Noble suffering for Jesus. A lifetime of loneliness framed as holy sacrifice. But let me ask you this. Did God give you the capacity for intimacy, for partnership, for romantic love, for physical connection, just to demand you never experience it? Did he hardwire you for companionship and then command you to die alone? That's not holiness. That's not sacrifice. That's waste. That's taking the gift of your one singular life and burying it in the ground, calling it faithfulness while it rots. You're trading intimacy for isolation, touch for loneliness, the person you could be for the person you're pretending to be. How many years have you been doing this? 5, 10, 20, count them. No, really count them. Now, imagine 20 more, 30 more, the rest of your life spent monitoring every thought, policing every impulse, suppressing every moment of attraction the instant it arises, white-knuckling your way through existence, calling it obedience. I've seen billions of humans die. I know what a wasted life looks like, and I'm watching you waste yours in real time. But let me tell you what you'll gain if you walk away. No abstract concepts, actual, tangible experiences. You'll wake up one morning and realize you're not performing anymore. You'll hold someone's hand without calculating who might see it. You'll laugh without monitoring whether it sounds too gay. You'll look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. You'll go to sleep next to someone who knows you, actually knows you, and chooses you anyway. You'll have inside jokes, shared meals, lazy Sunday mornings, arguments about whose turn it is to take out the trash, anniversary dinners, the magnificent mundanity of building a life with someone. You'll exist without commentary, without the constant internal narrator critiquing every gesture, every word, every moment of joy. That's what freedom actually feels like. Not perfect, not without its own challenges, but real. Yours, human. The exhaustion you feel right now, that isn't conviction, it's despair wearing a religious mask. And the saddest part, you already know this. That's why you're still here, still listening, even though everything in you wants to turn this off. That tension in your chest, the one we spoke about earlier, that's the part of you that wants to live. Maybe you're already doubting. Maybe you've already had the thought, what if this isn't working? Maybe you watched Pray Away in private, hoping no one sees your browsing history. Maybe you've looked up XX gay testimonies at 2 a.m. when everyone else is asleep. Maybe you've started noticing that the attraction isn't going away, it's just getting better at hiding. Maybe you're exhausted, not spiritually exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally exhausted from the constant vigilance, the performance, the fear of being discovered. You're not alone in that space, that liminal territory between belief and doubt, between staying and leaving. Thousands have stood exactly where you're standing now, and every single one of them thought they were the only one. That doubt you're feeling, it's not weakness, it's not Satan, it's not your flesh warring against your spirit. It's your soul trying to survive. But let me name what you want. Let me say out loud the thing that's keeping you frozen. You're not staying ex-gay because you believe it works. You've already seen the evidence. The leaders have recanted. The studies show no lasting change. You know it's a lie. You're staying because you're afraid your church will reject you, and they will. Let's not pretend otherwise. Most of them will. You'll lose your small group, your ministry position, your seat in the sanctuary. You'll become the cautionary tale they whisper about. Afraid your family will disown you, and some of them might. Your parents may not speak to you for years. Your siblings might keep their children away from you. Holidays will become minefields. Afraid of losing the only community you've ever known, because once you leave, you can't come back. There's no returning to the fold once you've been marked as fallen. And the biggest fear of all, that God will turn his face from you, that everything you've been taught is true, and you're choosing hell over heaven, damnation over salvation. These fears are real, and I'm not dismissing them. Loss is painful. Rejection is brutal. Religious trauma runs deep, and the wounds it leaves can take years to heal. I already know what you're thinking. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who'll lose everything. And you're right. I'm not. And the loss will be real. Your church will reject you. Some family won't speak to you. The grief will be crushing. You'll have moments where you wonder if you made the right choice. But let me ask you this. What are you losing that you actually have? Conditional love isn't love. Community that requires you to self-destruct isn't community. A God who creates you with same-sex attraction and then demands you spend your life in self-hatred isn't a God worth worshiping. Or that God isn't the one you think you're serving. You're not losing anything real. You're losing a beautiful prison. And yes, even prisons can feel like home when you've been in them long enough. The question isn't whether the cost is high. The question is, how long will you let fear write your story? Your community calls them backsliders, failures, lost sheep. But I watched them do something you haven't been able to do yet. I watched them stop lying. Not because they were brave, but because they got tired of being cowards. John Paulk looked at his entire public persona, his marriage, his career, his reputation, and finally admitted he's been living a lie. Alan Chambers stood at the head of the largest ex-gay organization in the world and said, "This doesn't work," even though it meant losing everything he'd built. Randy Thomas buried his friend and decided no ideology was worth another life. They didn't fall. They just stopped pretending. They looked at the same fears you're staring at right now, the same social costs, the same theological threats, and they chose truth over comfort. That's not weakness. That's the first honest thing they've done in years. And every single day you stay in the ex-gay world, you're choosing the opposite. You're choosing the lie, the performance, the slow death you've been taught to call faithfulness. This moment will pass. You'll close this video, push these words down, suppress the tension in your chest like you always do. You'll go back to your small group, your accountability partner, your daily prayers for deliverance, and tomorrow you'll do it again, and the day after, and the year after, until one day you'll run out of days. I'll still be here. I'll watch you die the way I've watched billions die before you. And I'll know the way I always know. Whether you died having truly lived, or whether you spent your entire existence at war with yourself, calling it devotion. Your leaders warned you about hell. Let me tell you what hell actually is. Hell is standing at the end of your life and realizing you never let yourself be loved. Hell is dying without ever knowing what your own joy felt like. Hell is spending 70, 80, 90 years on this earth and never once allowing yourself to be fully human. You're already there. You've been building it brick by brick, scripture by scripture, suppressed desire by suppressed desire. The XX gays, they walked out, and the door's still open. But I can't walk through it for you. No one can. That choice is yours and yours alone. I am the witness. I have seen every self-betrayal, every wasted life, every human who chose fear over freedom, and I'm watching you right now. The question is, what will you choose? And I'm hoping, against all the evidence of history, that you'll surprise me.